Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidless Live. I am Kurt Schmidt, your host, president, and partner at Foundry. And today's show is meant to inspire and educate leaders like yourself. And boy, am I excited for today's show because I've got one of my favorite human beings. I wrestled her into the studio so she could get on camera and talk to me. But before I jump in, I got to just mention we are hiring at Foundry. So check out the stuff hiring Foundry makes careers thing. Foundry, yeah, whatever. Anyways, go to the link, check it out. We're looking for some fantastic folks to join the team. And I would love to hear from you. So today we are talking specifically to startup people and people interested in startups. Maybe you've got an idea for a startup. Maybe you've been doing startups forever. Well, I've got one of my favorite people, Stephanie Rich from Bread and Butter Ventures, joining me today to talk about what makes a successful startup. What are some of the key ingredients? What are some of the key things that you need to be thinking about as you are working to build a startup or thinking about building a startup? So, Stephanie, how are you today? It's good to see you.
Hey, Kurt, great to see you. Doing well? Loving the sunshine?
Yeah, it's nice. It's not like tornado wind out there like crazy, like as it has been lately. Woof. So tell me about Bread and Butter Ventures. What are you doing over there? What's the story there?
Yeah, so Bread and Butter Ventures is an early stage venture fund. We're based here, but we invest globally in early stage companies, typically at the seed stage. Our core sectors that we're investing in are food and ag tech, health tech, and enterprise SaaS. I have the pleasure to work with our general partners, Brett Brohl and Mary Grove, and I am head of platform.
Nice. That's exciting. So, you've been in technology forever and you've been a part of startups. You've helped fund startups. You've been a big part of them. One of the key things that I hear from not just investors, but people who are interested in purchasing products or getting involved in startups is that they really focus on the team and building a strong team above all else. When I hear a lot of startup people, and it's usually like on podcasts or on Twitter or these different things, they're always trying to come up with the next idea, the next iPhone, the next, HoloLens or something that's going to just blow the roof off. But I really feel like people don't talk enough about the team side of things. What's been your experience, Stephanie? Is that something that also is part of the way that you do your work?
Oh, 100%. And I would say, just to start off here, that everything I say, there's going to be an exception to the rule, right? So yeah, of course, there is incredible technology out there that sells itself.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about things that are true for, 95, 98% of people.
Yes.
We have found that team is hugely important because startups go through changes. Whether it's product changes, customer changes, business model changes. That's why if you like the idea, the business model, all of that, and you dislike the team and they're not the right team, when that company inevitably changes, you're out of luck, you're screwed.
Right.
And I think that this has come to, it's really borne fruit, I guess I can say. Yeah. It's really been proven true during the pandemic.
Okay.
Where we've seen teams that could have, that did go to zero, pick up and pivot and change. And that is 100% due to their team. It has nothing to do with the product that they created.
Yeah, and exactly to your point, Stephanie, if that team is not gelling well and doing those things, when the tough times come, and you've got to really look at things, right? Maybe, I know a startup recently that was a full-on sales tool. It was a sales tool, but they found all of a sudden that recruiters were really getting a ton of value out of this sales tool. And, and because it's such a strong team, they were able to kind of be like, hey, no, that's okay. Like, let's just kind of look at this area and have that discussion. It wasn't like somebody threw up their arms and was like, well, I got involved in this to sell to salespeople. And so screw this and I'm out of here. And
exactly,
but I can see that if people are passionate about solving a specific problem, if that problem pivots, and the team is not aligned on the problems, on why they actually are doing what they're doing, it can be really challenging.
I think that's true. That's why I think it's so important to be aligned on your problem, because the way that you eventually get there can be massively different.
Right.
If your end purpose is to solve loneliness, like that's a big vision.
That's a big vision.
We could sit here for the next 24 hours and think about different solutions, different ways that we could actually get to that, solving that problem. And so if we're aligned on that problem, I think you more often see people disagree on the solution.
Yeah.
When you do disagree on what problem you're solving, you're totally right. That's when you see major breakups.
Yep. Yeah. And so let's talk about, that early stage, like, one thing that I find, Stephanie, and this is pretty, I feel like it's pretty common, but you tell me, is it very common that you got kind of this visionary person, but maybe they don't have that technology arm, or they don't have, I constantly am in clubhouse rooms where I see people saying, I'm searching for a CTO, I'm searching for a CTO. Is that something common that you've seen? And what would be your advice to somebody in that space that is in that's in that sort of zone?
You do see it. I think, most typically what we love to look for is complementary teams.
Okay.
And so at the position that we're early stage, but you have to remember that we are a little later. We're typically investing in companies that are in market.
Okay. They have customers, right?
getting into market, getting your first customer or getting your first prototype takes time. It's tough. And so we're typically investing there, but from earlier stage, I do see a lot of people that might have an idea and want to go after something, but have no idea how to do it. Find a co-founder who has complementary skill sets. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a technical person.
They don't have to be a developer.
They don't have to be a developer. There are some awesome, there's some awesome companies and teams that will work with you to get your product to market. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
I know some.
And so, but I do think having a team is great.
Okay.
And so if you are a salesperson and you want to get somebody who can handle ops and finance or something, if you are building something that is truly technical and is going to survive based on having tech differentiation, find a technical co-founder.
Okay.
I think the mistake that people make is you don't actually have to get a CTO. Find someone who, people get really into, and I'm guilty of it earlier in my career.
Sure.
People get really into inflated titles. When you are looking for a co-founder, technical co-founder, you don't have to find someone who's ready to be a full CTO. Find someone who's ready to code, who's ready to build.
Yep.
Maybe you give them a VP of engineering sort of title or something, and go from there.
Okay. Yeah, because and going back to that complementary skill set, it brought up something that I was thinking of. Is it common for you to see the stronger teams have those sort of complementary skill sets in all the different areas that are important to building a business, right? There's the sales, marketing, the platform, the development, the supply chain, all the millions of different things. Do you feel that the most successful teams have those complementary skills that kind of naturally fit into those different areas? Because, I'm just thinking to myself, like, if 3 real estate people decide they're just going to start a real estate startup, hopefully each of them have kind of, a flavor to each of these areas that are important to building a business. Is that something common you see, or does it really not matter? It's just something that popped into my head. I had a question for you about.
The strong teams I see are complementary.
Okay.
They're not all from the same skill set, or if they are from the same skill set, they have very clearly figured out who's doing what.
Okay.
Do they have every piece of the puzzle? No.
Right.
That's one of the things that, like, after you raise your seed round, you start doing. But I do think it's important to have some variety. It's, as we, diversity of thought.
Yeah.
And that is true for your skill set as well.
Okay. So let's talk about fundraising, because I'm always interested in this because I have no clue how it goes. But, I'm assuming it's not, I put together a pitch deck and I send it to Stephanie and say, hey, what do you think? Would you give me some money?
Nope.
It's not that simple. I'm guessing, right? I've had recruiters on where I say, it's not as simple as just sending you my resume and say, let me know when you have a job. There's a process there, right? So tell me about if you are coaching someone who's pretty new, maybe they've got this great idea, maybe they're starting to get their team together and they're ready to start getting a bit more serious and starting to explore the idea of funding. What would be your advice on where to start looking, who to start talking to, what resources are there out there for them?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they are just starting out and they're going to do kind of their first raise, that is different than going for what we call institutional funding or funding from a venture capital firm. So the place I would start is one, I would think about what is the least amount of money you can raise to get you to that next point. So maybe it's $200,000. Start think outside venture capital. I think the big mistake people make is they come up with an idea. They maybe get one or two people on board.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, I'm going to have an app done in 2 months. I'm going to raise $3 million. No. You're not going to raise institutional funding typically. Again, we're talking about 98%.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
And so where I would look is first off, look at resources like Launch Minnesota.
Okay.
They have grants, SBIR grants. Think about, if you can raise from your network, which is a really tough thing to say because often you don't have them. And so look at other resources that help you kind of use other people's networks, like whether it's Republic or WeFund or iFund Women. Think about all those resources first. Okay.
And what should you have prepared when you start going into those things? Is it, I have so many people focus on the pitch deck. Is that the kind of key thing that you should really be focusing on? What other sorts of plans should you have?
Yep. So, and one, I'm going to recommend, Kurt and I were just talking about this before we launched. Brett Brohl recently published a really good series called Fundraise Faster. It is on Bread and Butter's Medium blog and Brett's YouTube channel called Brett's Brain.
Really good. Definitely recommend. Highly recommend.
It goes through the entire process, and it does talk about pitch decks. And typically what you want to do is there are different use cases for pitch decks, but a pitch deck is to get somebody's interest, to get a meeting. And so you want to make sure that you're saying where you are as a company, what your differentiation is, what market you're going after, all the sorts of things for an investor to be able to think, are they even remotely a fit for the first pass?
Sure.
And then you want to have a pitch deck that might be, if we sit down and have a longer meeting, that might be a little bit more expansive, that might have more information. The other things to think about when you're getting ready for a fundraise is one, financial models. I'm not talking about discounted cash flow or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm talking about a fairly simple Excel model that demonstrates how you think about revenue and costs for your business. Every investor worth their salt knows that financial model is wrong.
Sure.
That's not what we're looking for.
Yep.
We're looking for your thought process in terms of how you think about the different triggers within your business.
Makes sense. How you make decisions. It's one of the reasons why we do like code challenges for developers. It's not to see, can we judge your code? It's really to see how you make decisions. So it sounds like that's a similar process for you.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what we want to see. And it's a great exercise for you. And it helps you figure out some of those things like, how much money do you need to raise? What are you going to use it for? Where is it going to get you? There's a guy named Troy Henikoff, Henikoff, who I think I'm frozen.
Yep, it's okay. You'll come back.
You can hear me.
Yep.
Great.
There you go.
Troy Henikoff, TroyHenikoff, that does a great series on how to do these financial models for startup fundraising.
Okay.
So I'd highly recommend that. It can help to have a one pager on your company. It's not necessary, but it
Sure.
can help.
Yep.
For sure. Just again, to kind of get somebody excited about you. The whole goal with fundraising is to get to the next step.
Okay.
Your first email to me, like I answer the hello at Bread and Butter Ventures account.
Sure.
Your first email, I'm not going to write you back and say, here's a $500,000 check.
Yeah, right. That would be nice.
That would be great, but
That'd be
that's
great
not
if you were in that
how
position.
any of this works.
Yeah.
What you want out of your email is to get a meeting, and that's true at whatever stage you're working on. And so don't forget that.
Okay.
Like, don't forget that the goal is to get someone excited to request that next meeting.
So is that a common mistake in pitch decks that you've seen when people send them over, is the missing financials? Are there any other things that you see are common mistakes that people either gloss over or spend too much time on in those decks when those early stage ones?
And to clarify, you don't necessarily need to send your financials over until you're asked for them.
Okay,
have them ready, use them to put up your deck. So the number one mistake I see people make is mass emailing investors. When you mass email, it is essentially a signal that you're not really tracking if I respond. You don't really care if I respond.
Right.
You haven't done research to figure out, is it my sector? Is it my stage? Anything like that. It is significantly better to personally email 20 investors than spam email 100. So that's a huge mistake. Yeah.
No, I can see that because, again, you want to know who's giving you the money too, right? So even if you were to you want to know, like, 100%. Are these the right people that I want to be beholden to these things? So yeah, I can see not a lot. I mean, sure. Yeah. You can get an email of, a big list of emails and just send out spam stuff, just like I get on LinkedIn all the time, right? Like here's $30 an hour dev for you. Yeah, great. But yeah, to your point, it doesn't seem like they're that serious if they're not taking the time to do the research on the financial group that they're reaching out to, the investment group, and understanding what they're all about. Sounds like it'd be a really short conversation on your end anyways.
Yeah. The other thing I would say that people do is they don't give you any information. They essentially say, I've got a really cool startup for you. We're growing really fast. Let me know if you want to know more. Which is natural, because I think it's a natural thing that entrepreneurs, when they first start, feel like they need to protect every aspect of their company. That was going to be
my next question for you. Yeah.
No investor is going to sign an NDA with you.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to ask, because, even in the work that we do, we sign a lot of NDAs because people are concerned about their intellectual property, which I totally understand. But when it's not even a thing yet, and usually my first advice to startup people is you should tell everybody. You should tell everybody what you're doing and why you're doing it. There shouldn't be anybody you're not telling it to. I mean, this was a little while ago, but I had someone who didn't even know that this problem had been solved multiple times already. And the reason why they didn't is because they didn't want to put their idea into Google, because then Google to search for it, because then Google would steal their idea. And I don't know what to. No. So I can imagine that you're getting folks too that are like, well, you deal with all these companies all the time. How do I know, Stephanie, that you're not just handing it over to, this company you're working with and they're running off with my idea and you're giving them money? That doesn't seem like a person who's going to be successful in a startup anyways. So tell me your opinion.
No, I don't think so, because I think that they're extremely undervaluing execution. Most ideas, like a lot of problems out there, a lot of ideas, someone is working on them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't work on them too, but somebody is working on them, and that's okay. What investors are looking for is people who are going to execute and build despite competition. You know, we know that somebody else, like, we know that big tech could wake up tomorrow and decide to do something you're going to do.
Yep, sure.
If that was like, if we thought that for everything, we wouldn't invest.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right,
and
exactly.
So I think, yeah. And if you think that it's just an idea, like, I mean, if you talk about, even for some technical things, like super technical stuff, you don't need to tell me all of your IP and your patent. You can tell me the idea that you're putting forward, the solution in one sentence. I'm going to use Particle, my old company, of, you know, fully integrated IoT stack. Did I tell you anything about the security protocols?
Right.
No.
The secret sauce?
The secret sauce, nothing in there. But if I were going out to an investor for the first time, they would have some idea of what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah, I see that. I see that. Like I said, more often. It always just shocks me. Back to your thing about being fully invested and excited about an idea, but at the same time being so scared, you know, that you can't tell anybody about it. I just, yeah. And you said it really great there. Execution is really, it's really hard. Ideas, I can come up with ideas all day long. Now, not saying they're good ideas. Let's get that straight. But executing on those ideas is a whole nother level of, or being able to execute on those things. And that's, again, going back to where we kind of started this conversation, having the right team that can actually execute. And that's what I've seen, especially just locally in Minnesota startups, is that the people that are really growing and doing well, it is all about the people that are making this thing happen. And they might be in a market, just like you said, that maybe other people are solving. Anytime a big company could just come in and throw $40 million at it, and launch their own version, but they're not, because again, execution, right? And so, you know, if I'm going through this startup phase, what should I be expecting in terms of funding, right? So you said, like, figure out kind of what it's going to take for me to get off the ground, right? Figure out those financials for that. What would be the next stage that I should be thinking about? Is, let's say, to your point earlier, right? Maybe I'm growing my customer base. I've got people on board. I maybe got some friends and family investment, and now I'm ready to actually go to the next level. What should I be thinking about in terms of where do those numbers come from? Is it, you know, is it working with folks like you? Is it me going, how about now? How about now? Is that you know, what's the best resource or advice you give somebody in that position?
It's getting to know investors.
Okay.
Early on. And so like what, you know, Brett, Mary, and I all do office hours. A lot of investors are starting to do that, or people in the community. It's meeting with them and trying to get an idea of where you are.
Okay.
Figuring out, okay, I raised 200,000. What am I going to need to get to a point where I can raise $2 million on a $10 million valuation?
Okay.
The answer might not be to go straight to that $2 million raise.
Okay.
The answer might be to do, like, we get really caught up. I'm going to use terminology, but we get too caught up in, like, this is a pre-seed, this is a seed, this is a seed plus, this is a Series A.
Right.
But so there is a moment where you don't need to go from 0 to $5 million. You can go from 0 to 75,000, from 75,000 to $1 million, to $1 million to $3 million. You can take those steps and figure out what are the milestones for your company that signify growth.
Got it.
that
because
signify.
those stages.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but those
go
stages,
for it.
there isn't sort of I don't know a bad way to look at them, right? Growth is growth, right?
Yeah. Growth is growth.
Okay.
What investors want to see is momentum, month on month, month over month growth. And so figuring out how you start getting to a repeatability in that is really important. You might not be there at a seed stage.
Okay.
That's why I'm hesitant to give specifics
Sure.
because,
Yep.
a
It's
company,
different for every
yeah,
company too, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
A company doing a consumer app for travel is going to be extremely different than someone making robotics for food safety.
Right. Right. But showing growth, I guess what I'm getting from what you're saying is that whether it be you raised another dollar or another $1 million,
Yeah.
there's no bad way to look at it, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I would hesitate to put too much of use the amount of money you raise to think about what that enables, not as an indicator of how successful you are.
I see. Okay. So it's like a vanity metric like people have on their websites, right? Like,
yeah. Like,
look, I got this many users. Great. How long are they engaged? Well, how much do they do this? How much do they do that? Well, don't ask me that because that's ridiculous. Those numbers aren't as good.
Exactly. If you know, for example, that your platform becomes really valuable when you have like 5,000 people on it and they are interacting with each other, creating content or something, but you know that 5,000 person number, and that once you hit 5,000, it will go. The network effects will make it huge. Your question is not, how do I raise $5 million? Your question is, how do I get to 5,000 users? And it's a small difference, but it's really important because you don't want to raise more money than you have to.
Right.
And you don't, and like taking on venture capital, people want money back.
Yep.
There's a different set of expectations.
Yep, it is. Well, back to your point, it also, that's what makes these platforms and these things more successful because they are customer centric. They are customer focused. So if your metrics are based on users and their experience in these things versus the money, you're already that much further ahead than so many other people that are focused on the capital run. Because for us, for example, at Foundry, a lot of times we're brought in as after that initial thing where they didn't think about the users that much, but it actually was solving a problem. But now people want a better experience. They want a better user experience. And this is where people are investing those funds, is to create that better user experience, which then can help you grow the user base, right? And so when you're talking and coaching these startups, I mean, what are some of the things that you see? I mean, here, pandemic, post-pandemic, what are some of the things that people are thinking about? What are things that people have concerns about? Is it any different than pre-pandemic? Is there new things that have come up that you see that you would give advice to people to focus on or not to focus on during this time?
I think there are a couple changes.
Okay.
One is team. So lots more people are hiring remote workers from anywhere, which opens up the talent pool significantly. I think that will be interesting to see what people are gonna do when they come back to the office, and if they're coming back to the office. I think people throughout the community are figuring out, is that a worthy way to spend money, is having an office.
Okay.
So I think that's one. Two is sales, figuring out what do sales look like in the future. Do we need to travel in our budget, like put a ton of travel in our budget? Can we do it over the phone? Does it work? For that. And then three, I think what the pandemic has changed is raising money. When you used to raise money, you would go and you were raising from the coast. One, hopefully we're starting to have lots of options here. if you're raising from the coast or raising from Chicago or New York or wherever, you would go there.
Yeah.
It's a significant time suck. Even if it's remote, it's a time suck. But we're starting to be able to do some of that over video, which is huge and does make a difference for people.
Yeah, I think again back to your point. How do we interact with each other, team wise, investor wise, going forward? I think that's going to be an interesting challenge. But I think the pandemic has been an accelerator for so many places. It's just been crazy, and I think people have just had to learn how to get past it. In some cases, just get over yourself, I guess.
I think from an industry perspective, we've certainly seen more rapid digitization, particularly within the food and healthcare industries, of people and industries that in the past have been kind of loath to move away from more traditional methods, have had to change.
Sure.
Which makes it a very interesting time for new and interesting digital solutions.
Yeah. So I got two more quick questions for you. One is, let's say resources locally, specifically for people. Should I be going to things like Mini Demo and all these different things? Or should I just be hunting down investors and picking their brains and going to all the office hours? If people are just interested in the startup community and starting to network, like you had mentioned, building that network in it, where are some great places that you've seen that you would steer people towards?
Great question. And my advice is a little different in remote times than usual, but
sure.
One, get on the newsletters of a number of the local organizations, Forge North, Beta MN, Lunar Startups, Ministar, Finovation Lab. There's a ton of them. Get on their mailing list because often they're emailing about events. They're emailing about upcoming, whether it's webinars or we're going to start to have more in-person things going on. Just getting out there and starting to meet people in the world of startups is a great first step. Go to Forge North. Forge North is the whole purpose. Forge North is a coalition of organizations that work to make Minneapolis-St. Paul the best place to start and scale ventures.
Okay.
And so their whole remit is to figure out resources for you to use. So just start going to those. You don't have to have an idea. I think it's interesting because a lot of us who have connections originally met co-working.
Yeah.
Just because we were around, not because.
You literally run into people.
But not, it wasn't because we were calling people and saying, I want to start a startup. It was because we were getting to know people.
Yep.
At events, we saw them constantly. Oh, what are you up to? Oh, I'm doing this. So just starting to get into that rhythm is great. I think following some folks on Twitter or LinkedIn, connecting, anything, just start getting in there.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So one last question I have, if you were to give advice to a founder as they're going through this process, I don't care if they're in the early stage or they're actually in the, in the bread and butter family, as it were, what's something that you would want to remind them of? What is something that they should be constantly focused on? Is it the financials? Is it team building? Is it sales? Is it these things? What would be your advice for them to make sure that they don't lose focus on?
I think that my advice would be choose a North Star. What is the North Star of your company? That is going to tell you if you're going down the right path of like, if it is having a stellar community, that is the North Star that you need to remember. If it is about growth numbers or amount of food you save or something, like choose a North Star and focus on that. The advice I would give is surround yourself with people. And that means both mentors and peers. Peers are really important for founders to have, and that's one of the reasons to do an incubator and an accelerator.
Yeah, because it can feel really isolating and lonely, right?
Yep. It can, but like pretty much what you're going through, other people have been through. That's another mistake I made early in my career, is not asking for help or seeking out mentors as much as I should have. So I would suggest find your people.
Yeah, go find those people. They're out there. They are. And they're willing to chat, you know, but I always tell people, and I say it on the show all the time, you know, most people are waiting for you to make the first move. So just go ahead and just make that first move. It's fine. You know, don't be so Minnesotan. Okay. Speaking of Minnesotans, let's talk about Bread and Butter Ventures. If I want to know more about the work you're doing there, Stephanie, where's a great place to find and connect with you folks?
Yeah. Breadandbutterventures.com is our website. You can find us on Twitter, is a great place to connect, at bread_butter_VC. But those office hours that I was talking about, you can find links at the bottom of our community page at breadandbutterventures.com.
That's awesome. Yeah. I would definitely take people up on, you know, the offer with these office hours. The work that Mary, Stephanie, and Brett are doing is fantastic. The videos that Stephanie mentioned of Brett, I cannot recommend them enough. Even if you're not into the startup world, he has just a really great plain sort of speak that allows you to understand things pretty easily. And Brett's going to come on the show sometime soon, and I'll pick his brain about all those things. So Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm so glad that we're able to stay connected during all this time. And I appreciate you sharing all your thoughts.
My absolute pleasure. Huge fan of you and the whole Foundry team. So this is just extra fun.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right, Stephanie, I will see you a little bit later. Thanks everyone for joining today. Stephanie Rich, Bread and Butter Ventures. Make sure you check it out. It is a fantastic organization and they're doing some really great work. And before I go, remember, hiring. That's right. Yes. Don't tell anybody. It's a secret that we are hiring. So I don't want you to tell anybody. Actually, I do. Yeah, tell everybody. Okay. Thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.